take a broad view. People who really can see broadly. Secondly, executives and managers who don't harbor a lot of fears, who are not worried about things, but think that things can be done, who don't think that employee loyalty is absolutely down the tubes, but that we need to find a way to capture it. Thirdly, people who love to explore new things. Fourthly, people who know how to give away their authority, how to pass it to teams rather than to give orders. Fifthly, people who know how to negotiate skillfully. Next, people who know how to manage even when they don't have control. In other words, persuaders, planners, strategists who don't need authority to get things managed. And finally, people, as we said before, who have a vision. And so let's talk a little bit about what communication today that's effective means. I've already suggested that it's super targeted at those people who can really do something about it, because behavior is the bottom line. Now, this takes some new learning and some new discipline for most of us, because we've been trained to try and reach everybody. Super targeting is not limited to outsiders. It's definitely part of inside, and I assume that you've all been doing this right along, and that this is just a basic part of what you do. What's the next step? The next step is one that I trust most of you will cheer. The next step is to focus the messages, the appeals that we send, and that means a lot of things. The first thing it means is brevity, less words. American organizations truly are suffering from just a tumbling out of words. Are you familiar with the General Electric rule about memos? GE has a memo sheet which is about a little over a half of an 8.5 by 11 page. And the rule is that if anybody sends you a memo that's longer than that, you don't have to read it. And if anything dire happens, it's the sender's fault and not yours. Not only that, but in that short space, you have to first summarize what you said, and secondly, tell what action steps you want, so that I can read your memo and I know right away, not that one, or I can say, wow, I better do something about this. And then you've got the rest of the page to make your case. Now, this doesn't mean if you're sending engineering drawings that you might not have a stack of drawings this big, but at least the memo, the action piece of it, is brief, to the point. It tells what needs to be done. In other words, what behavior are we appealing for? Well, this also applies, as I guess I implied earlier, to organizational communications. How many newsletters have you got going? US West looked, we helped them look 3 years ago, there were 102 newsletters in that company. 102 newsletters. Boy, we could downsize fast. I'll tell you, there's a lot of newsletter editors now in the Rocky Mountain states who used to work for US West. You know how many they have now? 2. 1 all-employee publication and 1 manager's newsletter, because there is a difference between what managers clearly need to know and what employees need to know. That's all they've got. It's true, the all-employee newsletter does come out on a weekly basis. Sometimes it's a single sheet. And sometimes it may be 8 pages. The question is, what is really worthy of communicating? It's not that it's a 4-pager and we're going to fill that baby up no matter what. The manager's newsletter comes out when necessary. When necessary. There's some very simple advice. The trial lawyers have a rule. People who try cases in court. They call it the trial lawyer's rule, and the rule is very simple. Never make more than 3 points to a jury. It's that old rule of 3 again. That's the case for brevity. But there's another one. Politicians have what they call the politician's rule, and that is never vote yes on anything that takes more than 1 minute to explain. If you can't explain in 1 minute, your constituents are not going to hear you, are not going to understand, and they're going to say, you dope, what did you vote on that for? Now, this sounds simple. Short memos, publications when you need them, stop all that paper flow. But boy, is this ever hard to get to happen. I hope that you can see the connection in all of this, because personally, I don't know what your philosophies are, but personally, when I look at this, I like a lot of things about it. First of all, I like the world in which a whole lot of people are involved. That's exciting. It's like old Soshihiro Honda when he started his company. Remember, this is a guy, Honda, slightly less than 40 years ago, he was building bicycles in his garage. Never forget that. The most popular car in the world, and he was building bicycles with his brother-in-law in his garage. If you ask him, how did you get to be so successful? He says it simple. He says, Detroit will never catch up with us. He says, here's why. He says, if I make the decisions, if I do not empower all my people and manage all the inevitable conflict, then he says, I have one brain power running my company. But, he says, we have 200,000 employees, and I want 200,000 brain power in my company. Well, that's what we're talking about. I think it's an exciting opportunity, and I know one thing for sure. You could, if you build this, the products and services you offer today could disappear. And as long as you had something, almost anything to replace them with, it would not matter. You could still be a vital, effective organization because you've got the relationships with the customers, with whomever else it takes, and you are a team yourself. So as far as I can see, this is not only a fun thing to do, a tremendous way for an organization to serve society, but it's also the best protection that I think there is in an increasingly changing and maybe even somewhat threatening world.